Jacobs. I'm the chairman of the SAFCEI board. Thank you all for being here. It looks like there's about over 100 people here this evening. And we're going to kick off the meeting. We anticipate that it'll be about an hour and a half. So we'll start off with opening devotions from Caroline Musago and Kitana. Over to Caroline.
Thank you. Let us pray. God of life, we thank you because you have given us the strength to be together in these moments, to invoke you, to present to you everything that moves us, to listen to the good news that you have for us in these times of struggles, but also of hope. Come to us yourself and wake us. Give us your light. Be our consolation. Speak to each one of us in such a way that we hear from you what we need and what helps us to face life and our commitment to our families, communities of faith, and the people of our towns and villages, now that we are suffering the consequences of what we have done with your creation. Amen.
Thank you, Caroline. Kitanya?
Are we doing a Sanskrit prayer? Om, 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 Om Bhurбhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We meditate on the most adored Supreme, the Creator whose divine light illuminates all realms, physical, mental, and spiritual. May this divine light illuminate our intellect. May there be peace, peace, peace.
Thank you, Kitanya. You should all see the agenda on the screen, and we'll be moving through the points on the agenda. If anybody has any questions to ask, please make use of the chat facility on the right-hand side, and people are monitoring those comments or questions, and they can respond to you, or you can raise your hand by clicking the raise your hand button. Just to give the apologies, Francesca, any particular people that need to mention as apologies?
Yes, we have an apology from Sondru, Annie Sondru.
Thank you. So on the picture that appears on your screen, you should see an indication of who the members are that are eligible to vote. Can everybody please keep their mics on mute throughout the meeting unless you have something to say? Wayne will be driving the program, and he has the power to mute from his side. So whoever's dog is barking in the background, can you please mute your mic? Thank you.
A new member applying to join, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Francesca, any other housekeeping rules that we need to mention?
Yes, Steve, sorry, this is Wayne. Hello, everybody. Can I go through, I'll go through the housekeeping rules and the identifying of participants eligible to vote. Good evening again, everybody who I haven't said good evening to. Thank you for making the time to attend our AGM, and especially by embracing this new technology that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to just let you know about the participants that are eligible to vote. In this meeting, we do have 2 sets of participants. I'm actually just going to turn my camera on, and I hope you can see me now, just so you're not talking into a void. We do have 2 kinds of participants in this meeting. We have SAFCEI members and then other normal participants. The SAFCEI members are allowed to vote and propose and second in the main plenary. They can do so by raising their hands. The raise hand function can be found as you hover over your name in the participant list or at the bottom of the participant list. The question often arises, why are some voting members and others are not? Voting members in SAFCEI are organizations who are part of the SAFCEI membership, and they designate a person to vote on their behalf. As Steve mentioned, we are using the chat box extensively. There are people monitoring the chat box. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to say, please do use the chat box. For those that don't know, if you're at the bottom of your screen, you can press chat and it will open up a little box on the right-hand side where you'll be able to type anything you'd like in there. So please do use that chat box. And as Steve said, if you have could you please all keep your mics on mute? It will just help us move through the agenda quite quickly. And also, as we stated earlier, in terms of bandwidth, it will help us save bandwidth if you could keep your mic on mute as well. Just to let you know again, if you do have any questions and we are not able to answer them in this session, we obviously will be able to engage afterwards as well. I think that's it. Thank you, Steve. I don't have to announce any bathroom breaks or anything like that because we're all on Zoom. You know, usually you announce where the toilets are and those kind of things, but we won't do that today. So thanks, Steve.
And you also don't have to mention what time dinner will be served.
Definitely not.
Okay, very good. So we are asking for somebody to propose the acceptance of the agenda as you see in front of you, and somebody to second. Anybody like to propose the acceptance of the agenda? If you do, please unmute yourself and say your name.
Glynis has her hand raised. She is proposing the acceptance of the agenda. Would
Thank you,
anyone
Glynis.
second, please?
This is Berry from CTRI. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Barry.
And Andrew Warmbach has also raised his hand, so thank you.
All right, now the 2019 AGM minutes have been circulated. For those of you who have read it, we're looking for somebody to propose the acceptance of those minutes. Anybody who's read the minutes that's happy to propose the acceptance of them? Nobody proposing the acceptance? Bridget. Thank you, Bridget. And somebody to second that.
Schwabe has seconded.
Schwabe, thank you very much.
Steve.
Okay.
Schwabe has put his hand up.
Thanks. I can't see everybody on my screen. Okay, we're going to move to point 7 on the agenda, annual report. So Francesca, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can see me now. This is such a strange format that we find ourselves in. Yeah, I'm also really missing the human presence and the food. But we are really thrilled that so many of you have come to be with us this evening. It really is a very special occasion in the sense that as a regional organization, Normally, we don't get a chance to really be regional in our meetings due to costs of flights and all the logistics and people's busy lives. So tonight, because of COVID, unfortunately, and because we've all gone online in our lives, we've now got the privilege of being together. So I'm just so thrilled that you could all join us today. And, you know, this is us looking back now in a different world, in a different time, which is only last year. And we want to spend a few moments now to share and celebrate with you. Hopefully you'll see pictures of yourselves and actions that you've taken with us along the years. And I also want to give a very warm welcome to new people to SAFCEI who've just come to find out about our work for the first time. When I'm looking back on these pictures from 2019, it seems extraordinary that we could be so close to each other and be relaxed. And what we live through now would have been extraordinary last year. So we've really done this leap into a different world and a different place. But we know as people of faith and as environmentalists that this has been long warned of. The perils of not taking nature seriously was something that we knew was coming. But unfortunately now we've seen how the damage and the destruction that we, the human race, have inflicted on the earth has really changed the fabric of our world. And we've seen how nature can bite back. And I know that many of us know this all too well, that this zoonosis, this invasion into wild spaces, into our forests and into farming of animals and eating wild animals creates this unleashing of these unknown viral infections into human populations. It's long been predicted, and now we are actually finally seeing it and having to deal with it. So, you know, this year where we sit now, or where we sit in tragedy and in challenge, one of the few silver linings that we can see, looking back and just being present, is that humans are able to adapt. All the resistance that we've heard from our governments and other people in decision-making seats, that we couldn't make the kind of changes that we need to make for the climate crisis, have all been shown to be entirely false. We know now what our future is going to look like. This is just a precursor of some much more serious crises that are on our very doorsteps. We know the climate crisis is here. We know that we're losing all of our biodiversity. We know that our future and our current challenges in a very stark light. And while this is all going on at this very juncture, we also know that our government is busy eroding our rights. SAFCEI, unfortunately, has seen an emergence of a very serious interest in nuclear energy by our South African government and in other governments in the region. We've seen a rise in discrimination. We've seen a rise in xenophobia. We've seen a rise in prejudice. We've seen a rise in violence against women. And it's an incredibly difficult and challenging time that we all find ourselves in. But that being said, I can't think of an organization better placed than SAFCEI to deal with these challenges, because we can join hands with you, faith leaders, who are incredibly well equipped to deal with tragedy, with the loss of life, with sickness and with illness, because you are people who literally are the custodians of human spirits. And this transition that many of us go through, we will all go through from life into death. That is a central part of your role. You prepare us for the afterlife. You prepare us to live better lives. And you're also passionate environmentalists. What a combination. I feel so privileged to work with you all. And this is the work that we've been doing together for many years, since 2005. We've been preparing for this moment. We've been coming together, we've been connecting, we've been learning from each other, and we've been forging new ways of working together. Even this year, I'm just so astounded by what you all and SAFCEI have achieved, despite the fact that we're not able to be together physically. So tonight, I actually want to pay tribute to all of you, faith leaders, for what you've done during the COVID crisis, for what you've done before the COVID crisis. When you have to, you really do put yourselves on the line for humanity and for the whole of the Earth community. And I just really applaud you for that. I also just want to take a moment. This is a long introduction to my annual report. I also just want to take a moment to really appreciate those who are with us today. We have many of our founding board. We have our founding leadership, Bishop Jeff Davies and Kate Davies. They started SAFCEI and they were the vision, along with the other founding board members such as Glynis, Craig Morrison, Andrew Wambach, Tahiri. We've also got Frank Maltino, and the list goes on. Sean Cosette, who's come back onto our board, which we're so thrilled about. We also have more recent past and present board members, Ridwan, and others. And I'm sorry if I've missed you out, there's such a long list. We also are so excited to have FLEAT with us, more FLEAT than normal because of our regional nature of our faith leader environmental advocacy training, and also some new members. The Cape Flat Interfaith Faith Leaders, great to see you and to be with you here tonight due to Barry Bear and CTII joining hands with SAFCEI. We're also sorry, I want to say, and I want to really make a special comment about Sondru, Annie Sondru, who served on the SAFCEI board. She also stepped in as the executive director for a while after Bishop Jeff had stepped down. And Sondru has been on the board for SAFCEI for some time, and she's now stepping down. So I just want to pay a special tribute to SAFCEI, to Sondru from SAFCEI, to say thank you so much, Sondru. She can't be with us tonight. She has a meditation class that she's taking, that she's hosting. So she did send all her very best and her apologies. I also want to give a special shout out to our northern partners who also aren't normally able to be with us. We've got some people from Sweden here and other places too, so great to have you with us. Church of Sweden, Jacqueline and Maria, and maybe Sarah is there too somewhere. And also some southern partners. I know I saw Karen from Heinrich Böll Stiftung, and I'm hoping lots of others are out there too. I can't quite look at the participation list at the moment. So I also want to give a tribute to former SAFCEI staff. You know who you are. Some of you are here tonight. You guys are stars and you've helped make us who we are. And the current staff. You guys are my champions. You have worked so hard for tonight. We have tried lots of different platforms. We have tested everything, and I'm sure we will still have challenges this evening, but really we've gone above and beyond to make sure we have a pleasant meeting this evening. So thank you so much to all of you for everything you've done and how hard you've worked during this time of COVID and before, because that's what we're really talking about tonight. So without any further ado, please can we go to the next slide. The highlights from 2019, I'm finally there. Well, we hosted 2 new FLEATs. These are the Faith Leader Environmental Advocacy Training. There was one hosted in the Peru and one in South Africa. And then others in partner organizations, partner countries and regionally, so those were follow-up meetings. We also did some very special training on energy last year. Although the nuclear threat wasn't very big last year, we knew something might be coming when the IRP came out. We also did some important partnership building in our strategic partnerships, and we held our first policy conference for 10 years. And that was a huge major achievement of last year. And that's something that I really want to focus on. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we did in terms of challenging government in its policies and our campaign. So thank you so much. On to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things that we did new in our annual report this year is linking our work to the Sustainable Development Goals. This is to help ourselves and others see how we are contributing to this global aims. And you can see here how SAFCEI's work actually does crisscross right across from climate action, life on Earth, peace, justice, and strong institutions into partnerships for goals. And that's really important for us. You know, we are a small NGO and we able to do our work because we have collaborative NGO and faith partners, and also some really amazing experts who work with us in incredible ways to deliver incredible reports and other campaigns. So we also work on zero hunger, quality education, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, and finally, responsible consumption and production. So you can see on our annual report, this is in our annual report, and I'm just showing you a snapshot from our annual report. So you can see the work that we've been doing. And please go to our website, download it. It's a fantastic document that we're very proud of. Can I have the next slide, please? So we held our first policy conference in 10 years in November last year, and we had over 90 faith leaders and other participants come and join us. We were at Msemi in Gauteng in Benoni, and we were looking at how to find a common justice response to the current challenges of the world. The conference was called A New Vision for Sacred Life and Living Earth. And it was really stimulating 2.5 days. And we somehow, I think, again, I pay tribute to faith leaders, we reached consensus on the main 6 themes that we were looking at, and we produced a document called the Johannesburg Declaration. And there's 6 main themes on eco-justice that we felt were absolutely critical for us. And I want to, because I think this is really important, just read to you very briefly sort of the 6 highlights. The first one is an end to extractive and damaging practices that destroy the natural world and human communities and that drive climate change. These are not in order of preference, they're just going through the 6 themed areas. The second call was for a reshaping of the global industrialized food system that is depleting natural systems, growing social inequality, and supporting the rise of health pandemics. That's a little bit of what you call it when you're predicting the future there in that second one, because that's where we find ourselves today. In the third, an end to the commodification of animals, including factory farming and other cruel and inhumane practices. The fourth is a just energy transition to renewables. The fifth, the urgent realization of rights related to our sacred to land and water, including equitable access to land. And finally, the protection and restoration of biodiversity. Please, can we go to the next slide? So these are just a few snapshots of the praying. Here's the declaration. And you can just keep on going along. That also is on our website, and you can download and have a look. Some other highlights from last year, we conceptualized and then co-hosted with a number of other environmental NGOs, the Energy Governance Group, a multi-political party panel on environmental issues. And you can see that there on the left-hand slide, there's Kumi Naidu, who was the chair. He facilitated the discussion. And we asked a representative from each of our political parties to come and be grilled from civil society. And some of them were up for it. So there you go. That was actually a really successful event. Over 300 people attended. And then there on the right-hand side, you can see Lydia Mongano, who's changed her name to Machaka. Lydia was a long-standing SAFCEI team member, and she was there at COP25. Unfortunately, Lydia has now gone to work for a European NGO, but she played such a wonderful role at SAFCEI, working on climate justice and other issues. And we just want to pay tribute to Lydia just right now too. Thanks, next slide. Okay, and then here we have a snapshot of FLEAT. I was saying to you earlier, this is a full program of SAFCEIs where we bring together faith leaders in different parts of regionally, in country, sometimes sub-country. And you can see at the top left, our amazing FLEAT coordinator, Zainab Adams. She's standing with faith leaders in the dam in Graaff-Reinet, That dam was the first time it had been empty in living memory, and they went and they witnessed the terrible destruction and drought that the Kraftwerk was experiencing and the crew, and they prayed. It's a very powerful image that actually went viral. On the right-hand side, you can see Desmond Desai taking FLEAT South Africa on a tour, the Toxic Tour. And then down below, you can see a snapshot of different FLEAT groups. I think one of them is in Mombasa. And yeah, just wonderful, wonderful, incredible conversations and connections and actions are being taken within FLEAT. It really is the flagship of SAFCEI's work. Next slide, please. Hello. Thank you. And then we featured this because it's a part of our work that we really want to encourage faith leaders tonight to think about. We offer this eco footprint workshop, and it's something we do. We did, this is an example of us. We did it with the Unitarians last year in Cape Town, Central Cape Town. And we are more than happy to do this online with you. It's a really great, we've got different levels of audits you can do on your faith buildings. And it's just a wonderful process of engaging with some of the issues that we have very practically around how to have greener places of worship and ways to inculcate that within congregations and our communities. Next slide, please. And then here we have just a snapshot again of our food and climate justice program. This was a wonderful seed swap that Robin Bowden, I hope you're here, Robin, ran for us at the end of last year. This was at the Philippine Horticultural Center. Really great way of working with other NGOs and also local farmers to think about seeds and where they're coming from. It was a wonderful event. And there's many other people I'd like to pay tribute to who made that happen, including Steph Swanepoel. Next slide, please. I feel like I'm missing out more people. I should have said Kim at the previous slide as well. Okay, and this is a campaign that not everyone knows that SAFCEI does, but we're actually part of a global campaign. You can see on the left-hand picture, there we are protesting outside Best Western in Europe. And on the right-hand side, this is the African group that work in the region looking specifically at getting hens out of cages. And this is around a wider animal justice program. Really that for us, there is no difference between us and the other species that live on the planet, that if we want to be treated with respect and love and care, then we must do the same to all of the Earth community. And here we see the first meeting of the African arm of this Open Wing Alliance campaign, and we were launching a campaign on the right-hand side against Wyndham Hotels. It's a really excellent and effective way of campaigning against corporates. Idea, although we're talking about hens to begin with, the idea that will create a tipping point where people think much more about where their food is coming from and whether it's acceptable and fair that we have to eat food that actually creates these avenues of disease like we see with COVID. Next slide, please. I'm coming to the end very soon. I just wanted to also pay tribute to our partners Sustaining the Wild Coast, who work in Kolobeni and Amadiba. They are partnering with us with Swedish Society for Nature Conservation, and they're running an amazing project which is called Yes for Youth on the left-hand side. And also you can see faith leaders who went to some very precious sands. You know, this is where the government has been pushing for titanium mining, and the community have stood up against them. And you can see a wonderful faith gathering that happened there. Those very precious, archaeologically rich sands, which also contain this titanium. I mean, if you heard the story, many of you may know it, it reminds me a lot of the story of Avatar. There's such a richness there, and yet it's where facts are even more compelling than fiction that we see in the movies. So please, next slide. Sorry, the slide changing isn't the quickest, but we are getting there. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you so much to my colleagues again. You guys are absolute stars. We couldn't have such a successful and amazing output of relationships, of partnerships, of campaigning, and of the really important work that we're doing without the really hard work of the team. So thank you all so much. And okay, that's my final slide. Thanks, everyone. I don't know if there were any questions in the chat, or if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Francesca. Now, normally Nokutula would give our financial report. She's on maternity leave, as some of you might know. So the person who's going to do the financial report is Paul Tyler. Thank you, Paul.
I thought I would start by just giving you the chance to see that I'm not a robot, the things one has to sign for when one does everything electronically these days. But I'm sure you'll want to focus more on the figures than on me. So let me present to you the audited annual financial statements for SAFCEI for the year ended 31st December 2019. All the work of Nokutula and Portia and the team, but I've had the chance to stand in and present these to you tonight. Just by way of introduction, not all of you are familiar with the ins and outs of the legislation that surrounds non-profit companies or the accounting standards and practices. So let me just give a brief background in that SAFCEI as a legal entity is set up as a non-profit company. And so its directors are responsible for maintaining adequate, and I'm sure they're very good, accounting records, and for the content and integrity of the financial statements which are placed before you tonight. The external auditors, for their part, are then responsible for obtaining what is called reasonable assurance about whether those financial statements are free from material misstatement, and then for issuing a report that includes their opinion on the statements. And I'm very glad to say that again this year, the auditor's report is unqualified, and it confirms that the financial statements of SAFCEI for the year ended 31st December 2019 present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of SAFCEI at the 31st of December 2019 and of its financial performance for the year that ended on that date. Now, thank you for the slide. The slides you see in front of you are just extracts of what's contained within the annual financial statements. And I noticed in the chat that the full set of statements has been posted. And as we speak, I think Rachel is going through page by page to find lots of difficult questions for me. So I'll wait for those later, Rachel. But in the meantime, we're looking first at the grant income of SAFCEI. And just to summarize the little table at the bottom, I hope you'll see that the grant income from the funding supporters of SAFCEI rose from the level in 2018 by almost 1.4 million rands, which is a 24% increase. And encouragingly too, that funding in 2019 was received from 11 different organizations compared with 10 in 2018. So SAFCEI really has established a committed, broad and diverse funding base, which is great news for its longer term financial sustainability. You'll see on the slide who the main contributors to the grant income of SAFCEI are, and of course there's, as Francesca has already said, huge thanks to them for the support that they give, not only financially but in so many other ways, to SAFCEI and its work. If I could go on to the next slide and take you from income then to expenditure, you'll see that just as the income rose, so did the expectations of the work and the activities to be done, and therefore so did the expenditure. And again, the little table at the bottom can be summarized fairly quickly, in that the spending in 2019 rose by just about 1.25 million rands, about 20.4% up on its 2018 levels. And then you'll see again from the table at the bottom that the majority of the expenditure was on program costs, which take up about 64% in the year of the total expenditure of SAFCEI. The remainder being the very necessary and important operational and administrative expenditure. In terms of the programs, the most significant increase in expenditure was that on the Food and Climate Justice program, which went from a low base of 71,000 rands in 2018 to 853,000 rands in 2019, which then meant it accounted for 18% of the program funds. And then, having looked at what's called the financial performance, the income and expenditure very briefly, if I could move to the next slide, we'll look at the financial position of SAFCEI as at the 31st of December 2019. And here again, the news is largely good. And what we look at primarily here is the level of the organization's reserves. You'll see a heading reserves and liabilities, and immediately under that capital and reserves. And those reserves represent the amounts of unrestricted income that SAFCEI has been able to set aside to provide a little bit of a cushion should there be a funding crisis, a cash flow crisis at any point in time. So you'll see that capital and reserves has risen in the year, not by a large amount, but by 94 or so thousand rands, which is a good step forward. But the measure really of the strength of the reserves is how long that amount of reserves would enable SAFCEI to sustain itself should it have a break in funding or cash flows. And basically that level of reserves, just under 780,000, really only covers approximately 1 month's expenditure. And what SAFCEI would hope to achieve in due course is to build that up to something like the equivalent of 3 to 6 months expenditure, because then they have a very fair and reasonable cushion against the vagaries of the funding climate. But the small surplus in 2019 has enabled the reserve to increase slightly, which is very positive. And the other main indicator one looks for on the statement of financial position then is whether SAFCEI has sufficient liquidity, whether it has sufficient cash in the bank to meet all its liabilities. And here again, the news is good, that sitting under the line that reads current assets, our cash balances at the year end of 2.5 million rands, and that more than covers the liabilities, which sit a little bit further down, and the line current liabilities of just over 2.1 million rands. So there's good news there too on the liquidity. So all in all, a satisfactory year in terms of financial performance, and a satisfactory financial position at the end of that year. The other task that the auditors have, I will briefly mention before closing, is that they are to provide SAFCEI with what is called a management letter. And in that management letter, they set out any weaknesses in internal controls that they came across during the course of their audit. The audit's not designed to find fault with the internal control systems, but from time to time, things are found and they need to be reported to the governing structures at SAFCEI. Good news there too is that there was only one item reported, and that was to ask SAFCEI to follow up with SARS whether or not it should be registered for skills development levy, and that inquiry is taking place with the tax exemption unit at the moment. So that's just a little snapshot, an extract of what I felt were the highlights of the audited annual financial statements for 2019. You may, in looking through the full set of statements, have found other things you would like to comment on or to raise questions on before the accounts, the financial statements are put forward for acceptance. So please, again, as you've been encouraged to put a question in the chat if you have one, or if it's easier to just switch on your mics and hit us with the question, then please do so.
Are there any questions anybody would like to ask Paul that are pressing, that can't be done via a request that can be responded to electronically?
Stephen, thank you. I see that Rachel has asked which expenditure line the policy conference came under. Sadly, I can't answer that one. I haven't got the detailed breakdowns in front of me. Francesca, is that something that could just be responded to offline, or do you know off the top of your head?
Yes, it was because it involved all of our programs. We had some dedicated funding for it, but we also had funding that supported it from each of our programs because it was cross-cutting. So it wasn't a separate item reported on separately in this sense. But I mean, we can talk to you about the cost of policy conferences. It's one of the reasons I think why we had more budget last year, and also why we only have policy conferences once every 10 years, because they're an expensive thing to run if you're doing face-to-face like we did. So yeah, that's a short answer. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Any other questions that need to be dealt with right now? Thank you. Please remember you can communicate with us via email if you have any specific questions. We're going to ask that the voting members vote on the acceptance of the accounts. Can all voting members that are happy to vote for the acceptance of the accounts please indicate?
Sorry, could someone please nominate the acceptance of the accounts?
I see Bram has Francesca.
Great, and could we have someone second that? I see Glynis has.
Thank you. And then the voting is going to happen via WhatsApp. There's a separate WhatsApp group that's been set up for voting members. Please, can you respond? We have some responses coming in, all yeses.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, voting members. This is, we are currently voting on a new board member, I believe. Is that what we're voting on here? Sorry, I've lost track slightly here because the screen says Solace Consulting.
We're voting on the acceptance of the finances.
Okay.
Thank you. So all the responses that have come in are positive. Thank you very much for those who have voted. There are 19 voting members, and there are currently 91 members attending this Zoom AGM.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I think we have a consensus from the voting members to accept the accounts, and then the auditors, which, sorry, I went a bit quickly past the auditors. I just have to go back just to confirm the auditing firm.
Thank you.
Great. I know Portia's taking notes of that, so she's probably got that right in hand.
So we have lost one board member, and we have somebody who's been nominated to serve as a board member. Francesca, do you want to just briefly introduce this new person?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Could we go to the next slide, please? And one more slide, please. Organizational members, this is the current board and everyone. You can see that I'm an ex officio as executive director. I also serve on the board. Stephen Jacobs, who's kindly chairing us in the board and also this evening. We also have Kirtanya. She's here with us. She did an opening prayer for us. Beautiful opening prayer. And Dr. Brahm is also here this evening. We also have Molana Shwaib with us, and Usha, who's all the way from Guyana. I think Usha's our farthest away person who's attending this evening, Usha. So thank you so much for being here. Also Reverend Sean Cosette. So wonderful you can be here. And finally, Claire, who has helped us with our finances enormously in the past year. And then finally, as I said earlier, we want to pay tribute to Annie Sondru, who has really served us so well on the board. So if we just go on to the next slide, we can share with you all the wonderful news of the nomination of David Muneni from Sinessa. David is with us this evening. We are absolutely thrilled for this opportunity to have David to join our board. He is a very dynamic environmentalist faith leader, and they're doing some fantastic work at Sinessa in Kenya and also across the region. They're another regional entity, so we feel that David will be an extremely valuable addition to our board. And so now we would like to please invite the voting members in your WhatsApp group, please to vote on whether David Muneni will be joining the board or not. And you'll see in the WhatsApp group, which we set up just for today's meeting, that's how we're doing the voting, because it was a little bit too complicated on Zoom. We tried all kinds of approaches. So I see lots of yeses coming through, which is really exciting. I think we are going to have a full house here at this rate. I know someone else is counting them up for us.
Great. Thanks, Francesca. We've got it perfectly. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, voting members. You guys are stars. And thank you, everyone else. we're really excited. David, are you here? Can we just say hi to you? Can we give you a minute? Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Yeah, sure. I've been here all along. Thank you.
Great to see you, David, and welcome to SAFCEI in a formal way.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. It's 7:06 in Nairobi here, and I'm really pleased to have been given the opportunity to serve in SAFCEI. It has always been a dream for me to care for creation through SAFCEI and bring creation. We as stewards of God's creation. I really look forward to giving it my all, and the contribution I hope to bring will Godspeed help us to take SAFCEI to the next level. And I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you very much for the honor and the favor you have bestowed upon me.
Thank you,
David.
Great to see you.
Can we see
Likewise.
David for a minute? Can he put his video on for a minute?
My video is on. Maybe it's yet to transmit on
when you
your
can
end.
unshare the screen, maybe, so everyone can see David,
Oh,
because
yeah,
he's
yeah.
only a tiny thumbnail there.
David, if you just talk, then you'll go to.
Yeah, so I think my video should be on by now. So
There we go.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And I just want to correct something I've seen on the profile that was shared. I am not the founder of SAINESA. I'd like to put that on record. I work with SAINESA since its formation, before it was registered, and I continue to do so. But my founder is Alan Otaro. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
David, so humble. Thank you.
Okay, item number 12 on the agenda, motions to be put to the AGM. Are there any things that anybody would like to raise that should be addressed this evening? If so, please unmute and speak.
Can I have a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was based on, I'm absolutely delighted, and David is fantastic, and welcome David on board. But my question, and this is something maybe for SAFCEI to take forward, is SAFCEI now moving into becoming more of an African footprint, or is it Southern and East Africa? Does the name need to be changed? It's quite significant to be having a board member who's on East Africa, which is fantastic, but it does mean that now you can't expect to have a board member and then SAFCEI not be as strong in East Africa as it is in Southern Africa. So what does that mean in terms of the policy direction of SAFCEI? I would be very excited if we can move into East Africa, but is that a policy? Is that a decision? Where's SAFCEI going with this decision to move into East Africa? Thank you.
Francesca, do you want to address that?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Reverend Rachel. It's such a good question. And yes, our name is Southern Africa, but we have been for actually a few years already working in Kenya. We also run training in Uganda and Tanzania. And I can't remember where the line is for SADC, which was our original scope of work. And it is, I think, Rachel, a really, really excellent question. This year, we are going to undergo a strategic planning process and hopefully forecasting a little bit further into the future. And these are the sorts of questions that we need to ask ourselves, because we have programmatically already started doing that, but we didn't get as far as thinking, what does that mean in terms of sort of naming and branding and so on. And also, I think it's really important always to remember that we work collaboratively. We work where we feel that we can add value, where we're asked to add value, but we don't want to sort of step on the toes of others who are doing excellent work. So it's very important that we make sure that we keep our footprint appropriate, There's no point in expanding, but we want to work collaboratively, and we don't want to be bound too much by geography. We want to be bound by eco-justice, bound by faith. And, you know, there have been other campaigns like the We Have Faith campaign that didn't have a geographic boundary and was so successful. So, yeah, I think it's a really excellent question, Rachel, and it's definitely something we need to take back to the board and to our partners to discuss further at a later date.
Thank you for that. Any other motions to be raised?
Well, Stephen, can I just come in for a minute and just encourage Francesca and the SAFCEI board in following up Rachel's question, partly because there are countries like Zambia, which I think could really help, and Kenya itself. And Kenya has got, as you know, the All Africa Conference of Churches. But like many church organizations, it's still pretty human-centered. And so we could then try and work with them to bring about a greater ecological understanding of our responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you also, Bishop Jeff, so much. Yeah, I have to say that I don't know if Zambia is part of SADC. I need to read up on my my countries in SADC, but Zambia is on our list as well. Very much in solidarity. And I also want to pay tribute to Makoma and some of the work that EarthLife Africa have been doing regionally against nuclear energy. Makoma has started an initiative which is bringing together countries across Africa which are facing the threat of nuclear energy, and Kenya is one of them. So it is a Pan-African initiative, and SAFCEI are very pleased to be supporting that process. And so, yeah, I think there are ways that we do need to not be too tight in our boundaries. So I absolutely think it's really important.
Anything else? Then allow me to move us. There's somebody wanting to speak. Who's that?
It's Liz McDadia.
Hi, Liz.
How's it? Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to just say, in terms of different countries in the region, and now I've kind of lost track of time, but FLEAT, I think, has been running for at least 3 or 4 years, and there are faith leaders from all over Southern and Eastern Africa, including Zambia, Malawi, Uganda, and so I do think, in a sense of form following function, SAFCEI is already operating in all of those countries, and it would make sense in your strategic plan to look at how the regional body can be strengthened, and I think Jeff has made a very good point sorry, about Kenya and its strategic significance. And I just want to say congrats and welcome David, who was one of our very first FLEAT people, FLEAT 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Can we move on to the next item on the agenda?
Sorry, Steve. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to just respond. There was a message in the chat from Reverend Dr. Thomas, and absolutely, I agree with you, Reverend Dr. Thomas. Organic farming in Eastern Southern Africa is absolutely key to building resilient communities, and it's been more of a focus as time has gone on into 2020. And so, yeah, I'd love to talk more with you about that, but perhaps we should leave that for another meeting. But and someone has just pointed out to me that the word that we've been using is agroecology, because that has a wider ecological impact than organic. But let's have that conversation. Those are really good points, and thank you all for really great engagements from Liz and Bishop Jeff as well. Thank you.
Item 13 on the agenda is any other business. I'm asking anybody present if there's any other business you'd like to raise. We'll take that as a no. Moving on to, how do we do a photo of the group? Georgina.
Hi. So before we move on, I see that Gladys Makada has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Gladys?
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you so much. That's a lovely message. All right, so for the picture, if everyone would put on their screen, and then I will do a few screenshots. So just give me a second here. All right. Perfect. Miss Anne October. All right, and we have about 4 screens. So there's going to be about 4 pictures that I'm going to take. So the first one, 1, 2, 3, say cheese.
Cheese.
Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3, say cheese.
Cheese. Cheese. It's so great to see you all. I have to say, this is so much fun.
All right, it looks like some people on the 3rd page haven't put their cameras on. I see Carl, Rev Craig. Just waiting for more people to put their cameras on. Okay, a few more minutes. Okay, we're slowly popping up. Right.
Sorry, I only put my screen on now, so I think I was.
It's absolutely fun. Okay, I'm going to go now. 1, 2, 3, say cheese.
Cheese.
Cheese. Cheese.
Cheese.
And one more. I see here Moses Clutie doesn't have your screen on. Please, everyone, if you want to be seen in the picture, please put your screen on, your camera on, I mean.
We want to see your smiling face, Moses. Where are you?
All right. Okay, I'll just give it a few more seconds.
They do move around. That's one of the challenges, that the screens don't stay put.
Yeah, that's the one problem. Okay, I'm just going to take this picture. So 1, 2, 3, cheese.
Cheese.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, everybody, if you, we're going to move to the closure of the meeting and to the exciting address by our keynote speaker. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this annual general meeting of SAFCEI. And let's hope that the next AGM we can be live in the flesh. And wishing SAFCEI very well into the future and continue to do the fantastic work and get the support from all the people who we are surrounded by. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and I'm going to ask Francesca to please introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Steve, for taking us through the business end of the meeting. And thank you all so much. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to welcome Nnimmo Bassey. Many of you will know Nnimmo. He doesn't need much of an introduction, but for those of you who maybe haven't met Nnimmo previously, I want to tell you a little bit about him. Nnimmo is from Nigeria, and he's an environmental activist, author, and poet. He's also an architect by training before he became a full-time environmentalist. Nnimmo, you know, it's another one of these strange, wonderful moments that we could have Nnimmo with us this evening. Because of this Zoom and COVID, we're very lucky that he was able to join us this evening. Nnimmo previously chaired Friends of the Earth International, and he also ran Friends of the Earth in Nigeria. He now runs an organization called the Health of Mother Earth Foundation, which is also known as HomeRef. And he also previously received the Right Livelihood Award, among many, many others. So Nnimmo is here tonight to give us an address on It Takes Faith. And I've known Nnimmo for quite a long time already, it seems. I think I met him for the first time in Norway, and it must have been at least over a decade ago for sure. But it's so great to have you with us this evening, Nnimmo. Thank you so much. I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Thanks to everyone in SAFCEI. It's a great privilege for me to join this AGM and to listen to all the business proceedings, quite efficient, and I must say highly impressive. I wish that all organizations could run their AGM that way. I'll try to be quick. I know you've been on for a long time. I'll be speaking on It Takes Faith, as been announced already. I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I don't take it lightly at all, especially having to zoom in all the way from Nigeria to speak to most of you in South Africa. And of course, I saw David from Kenya, and maybe people from other Nigerians and other people who have joined from around the world. I just want to say that, first of all, that all peoples have stories about how the world came to be, and some do have stories about where the world will end or where it is going. The interesting thing is that for those of us in the community of faith, we believe that the planet Earth and all the planets and everything else, visible or invisible, were created by God. And we believe this by faith. And this triggers a fuller understanding of our interdependence and community. It also helps us to critically understand that humans have a duty of care. You may say a duty of stewardship or even trusteeship over all that creation has given unto us. And this is a very serious responsibility. Very serious responsibility indeed. The notion of trusteeship usually entails having some persons acting on behalf of others in a way that ensures that the persons that are acting on whose behalf they are acting enjoy the best possibilities of what is available or what needs to be handled. In terms of Earth's trusteeship, what I understand is that humans must know that we are not the only beings on Earth. So it's a duty for us to know that we have a sacred responsibility to take care of the planet in a way that other beings are not damaged or harmed or destroyed. Of course, this is why we're called human beings. We call ourselves human beings because we know that there are other beings. If there were no other beings, we would have just said we are the beings, but we are not the beings, we are the human beings. One good way of looking at this is to look at every other being on the planet Earth as our relatives, especially those that we consider to be living beings. Because there are beings, I believe there are some beings that we think are not living, that are actually living, but our limited understanding will classify them as not living. But this never gives us the right to destroy them, to kill them, to harm them in ways that are unacceptable. The point I'm making is that we must never ignore the right of other beings to enjoy to also enjoy the environment that we enjoy. Mother Earth herself has a right to maintain her natural cycles given by God. One way to look at this is to consider a healthy teaspoonful of soil. A healthy teaspoonful of soil contains millions of organisms that we may not see with our naked eyes. And so my advice at this point is to remind us never to ignore what we cannot see. And of course, never ignore what you can see. Our whole body is made up of there are a lot of organisms living, microorganisms living in us, millions and millions on our skin, some in us internally, some in our bloodstreams and all that. And some of these organisms they're working very hard to keep us healthy, working very hard to moderate our moods, whether we're smiling or we're happy or moody, they're working over time, all the time, to keep us healthy. And so we have a responsibility to treat even the soil very carefully. A lot of harm comes to the soil through industrial agricultural production, through the use of use of chemicals that kill millions of living organisms in the soil that work naturally to keep the soil healthy and to give us healthy and safe foods. Now, this notion of care requires that as we take care of ourselves, so should we take care of other microorganisms, things that we cannot see. The more we take care of the environment, the more the environment takes care of us. This cannot be, we cannot really debate this. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that habitat destruction and undue interactions or dislocation of other beings, of animals and other living creatures have repercussions for our health. And the pandemic has also shown that we don't have the full capacity to respond to everything that comes to us. Our response for the pandemic was to lock down, to restrict ourselves, to wear face masks and do other things. Now there are other more dangerous pandemics that could happen. For example, if we had a climate pandemic, when we call it climate change, we sometimes get confused thinking that, well, that's really nothing to worry too much about. But if we look at the earth as having a fever, a serious fever, then we can begin to see why we need to take some steps, some dramatic steps to ensure that we don't destroy what has been given to us so freely, but that we work in harmony. Now, the damage that has been going on our environment, sometimes we take for granted. We just accept certain parts of Africa to be sacrifice zones. But one thing that really struck me was over the past few days after the oil spill in Mauritius, the whole world became very attentive to oil spill in Mauritius, probably because of the beautiful coral reefs and the aquatic life forms that were being harmed. But when I sit back in Nigeria, I think about the 1,300 oil spills that occurred between 2018 and 2019, and the fact that we have an average of 5 oil spills every day in the Niger Delta. And because this has been taken as a sacrifice zone, as something normal, we don't pay attention to it. But people are dying. They call it this real ecocide happening and just taken as normal. There are coal mine caves in South Africa that have been on fire for decades. There's acid mine drainage across mining communities on this continent of Africa. And we just take it, well, something had to break so that we can make profit, so that we can build up big capital, and so that corporations and politicians can wield more power. You know, the more we damage nature, the more we harm ourselves. And this is why I'm so glad that the South African faith community, you know, represented by SAFCEI, would focus so much on caring about creation, caring about the environment. If more faith people speak up at home, at work, wherever we gather, I am sure that our voices will be loud enough to get those in power, those in political power, and those who are driving the kind of damage that we're seeing across the continent, across the world, to wake up to their responsibilities. But what do we see right now? We're seeing a lot of harm going on as business as usual. Burnt skies, burnt lands, burnt seas. I've seen some places where rivers are on fire. So that if you in such communities, if you see a fire raging, don't jump into the river, because the river itself may be on fire. The picture I'm sharing with you is about gas flaring in the Niger Delta. Some of these gas flaring are horizontal, by the oil companies trying to hide them from view right in the middle of communities or in forests or in swamps, and some are on giant stacks looking like big cigarettes, giant cigarettes in the sky. But through these flares, some of which are routine, most of which are routine actually, across the continent, wherever oil is being extracted or gas is being extracted. We also have the non-routine in some refineries and so on. But these are pumping elements to the atmosphere, greenhouse gases that are increasing global warming problems. And then, of course, elements that are causing cancers, skin diseases, blood disorders, birth defects, causing bronchitis, asthma, and all kinds of diseases. And of course, also the nitrogen and sulfur oxides mixing with humidity to rain down as acid rain on communities. And so this is taken where I come from as normal. Years of campaign, years of argument against this, litigation, struggles have largely been ignored, all because people believe that this has to happen so as for financial gains, for budgets to be balanced. We've seen that the fact that sometimes environmental degradation and ecocide is permitted or taken as normal, as I've said, just because somebody says you have to break the egg to make the omelette. I was in one factory in Togo some years back, and this factory produces phosphate used in making artificial chemical fertilizers, and they just pump their waste straight into the Atlantic Ocean. And I asked the question, how could you do this without any sense of accountability or responsibility? And I was told, actually, the manager of the factory told us that you have to break the egg to make the omelette. I think this was a great act of irresponsibility. It's something that cannot be accepted. It was in argument against this kind of degradation that 25 years ago, Nigeria's foremost environmentalists and community activists, political activists, Ken Sarawiwa, and 8 other Ogoni leaders were executed. It's because of this kind of attitude to environment that miners were killed in Marikana some years back, asking for just a bit of better conditions of work in those dreary mine pits. And so I believe people of faith have a duty to speak up wherever we see this kind of ecological crimes happening, wherever we see nature being harmed, wherever we see the children of God being damaged, being destroyed or killed, or their health impaired the way extractive activities have made happen. Now, climate action has been hampered by human greed. So many years of negotiations have boiled down to people, governments meeting to negotiate how to avoid action. One of the major causes of global warming is the continuous burning of fossil fuels. And so why have we not agreed to keep the oil in the soil and the coal in the hole? It's all about capital. It's all about power. It's about the international division of labor, that this must be extracted somewhere and utilized somewhere else. And we've forgotten completely about the essential criteria for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, for the basic political philosophy, for the negotiation for climate action, was a common but differentiated responsibilities, where those who have created more of the problem ought to do more to tackle or solve this. Africa has contributed very little to the global warming problem. But right now, African nations are actually pumping beyond above their weight in terms of actions, in terms of so-called nationally determined contributions. Some of them want to cut emissions. They are not even emitting. You know, just showing the level of fiction that that ought to now be supplanted with real action. Early last year, we had Cyclone Idai that hit Mozambique, Tanzania, and other countries on the southeastern coast of Southern Africa. 1,000 people lost their lives. Damage of about $2 billion happened just in one cyclone, plus Cyclone Kenneth, in just a few weeks, a few days, I would say. And now, since 2010, the world had agreed to raise $10 billion for climate finance. And from this year, 2020, the amount ought to be $100 billion a year to help finance mitigation actions and building resilience in vulnerable countries and territories like small island states and poor countries and regions, including those in Africa. We also note that one hurricane in a place like the US could cause damage of up to $100 billion. So $100 billion to tackle global warming per year across the world is really nothing. It's something that ought to be done with all zest, knowing that when we tackle global warming and help build resilience in any territory, we're adding up to the resilience of the entire planet to the harms that come from global warming. But we don't see this kind of urgency. We don't see this sense of duty being exhibited by our people. We tend to think that we are masters of our fate. We tend to think that whatever is broken can be fixed. We tend to think that techno fixes will solve the problem. And this is the direction of climate negotiations. And this is what nations in Africa and faith communities across the world ought to speak up. Fiction will not solve the real ecological disaster that is confronting the world. We're having proposals for geoengineering and extreme genetic engineering, where plants may be genetically engineered to have heightened levels of photosynthesis. In other words, helping nature to be more efficient than nature. We're having stories of mirrors that we place in the sky to reflect radiation back into space. We're having proposals to seep the clouds by pumping seawater into the clouds, to whiten the clouds so as to reflect radiation back into the sky, or to capture it, to burn fossil fuels, then capture the carbon and bury in rock formations or in tanks. And I always ask this question. Supposing you are actually able to capture in a commercial level, capture all this carbon and then bury them in tanks under the earth, for how many years would those tanks stay without their burst before they rust and before they give up? We just say that the action that needs to be taken is simple. Urgent transition from dirty energy to clean energy. Taking care that workers don't lose jobs, or workers are trained to get jobs in other fields that are cleaner, that are safer, and will be able to earn them sufficient income to take care of themselves and take care of their families and build a safer economy for the whole world. How are we going to do this? We're so much used to business as usual, to doing what we believe is natural, what we believe does not fits our imagination, but we need to renew our minds. We need to renew our minds. We need to rethink, go back into history. We need to relearn our history. We need to relearn how we live with nature. We need to relearn how we could live, how we used to live with limited carbon footprint. We need to retell our stories. The world is being run by the wrong stories. We need to review our imagination, our imaginaries. The imagination that says you have to destroy so as to accumulate capital. The imagination that says workers are dispensable, people are dispensable. When you look at COVID, fatalities are just mere statistics, but not think of them as people who lost their lives, who left loved ones behind to mourn their demise. But every day we just pile up statistics oh, we've lost this amount, this thousand, these millions of people. We need to renew our minds. We need to think back, regain our minds as humans who are living with other beings. And I believe this is a good time for us to build global solidarity. Globalization is not a bad word. If we use globalization to build the globalization of citizens, globalization of faith, globalization of hope, reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with Mother Earth, reconnecting with this beautiful garden that God has given unto us, owning our narrative, telling our stories, stories of love, of joy, stories of growing gardens, of harvesting beautiful crops, stories of living with other creatures, with insects, listening to the sounds, singing of birds, and enjoying the movements that we see in the sky, in the waters, on the land. And of course, responsibility of knowing that whatever we do today, we owe it as a duty for future generations to enjoy what nature, what God has given unto us. Our duty of care, our duty of stewardship, and taking real action to defend our environment, to defend the vulnerable. If we don't care for the poor, for the orphans, for those who are marginalized in our societies, we are actually making ourselves poor, making ourselves orphans. And if we don't care for the orphans and the poor, and we become the orphans and the poor, who will care for us? These are some of the questions I believe we should reflect on. And I think from what we've seen, the discussion we had today, the beautiful meeting that we've had today, and the resolve to go forward, I believe that we're moving in the right direction. And I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts on what I know you work so much on. So together we can make a difference. Let's go, and thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. We're going to ask Bishop Jeff to give a vote of thanks.
Hello, Mo, fantastic. Thank you so much. That really was terrific. A wonderful sweep of our responsibility, of our joy, our love of what we should be doing. It really, I'm enormously grateful to you, and wonderful to have the opportunity to hear from you from Nigeria. I think we first met certainly for the climate talks in 2011, but possibly at some of the climate talks before that. And we're enormously grateful for the work that you have been doing and you continue to do, speaking, writing, your poetry, and witnessing to our challenge to care for this incredible world, as you said, that God has brought into being and has entrusted us to care for it. So we want to thank you, and we want to encourage you. And we have to say, we need to encourage you, because we have to admit that though we met you so many years ago and the struggle has been continuing, the situation has actually got worse since I first met you. And so we have to redouble our efforts in caring for this beautiful world. I also just want to take the opportunity of saying thank you to all who are at the AGM. I think it's gone extremely well, and to thank the SAFCEI staff for their ongoing good work. That's terrific. But our fragile planet, and it is a fragile planet, needs our work more than ever. And apart from the world's ongoing reliance on fossil fuels, we are now up against horrendous forces of power. Right-wing extremist leaders who say money is more important than life. And I don't think I need mention who. I mean, when you look at our planet and you look at the United States, at Brazil, at Putin, it's very disturbing. The way to overcome this, I believe, and following what Nnimmo has said, is mass mobilization of the people. And I think the Extinction Rebellion is really showing how determined younger people are becoming. But I think more important is that the solution, the way ahead, has been revealed to us in all our faiths. All faiths call on us, humans, to seek and implement justice and equity, compassion and love. Those principles must now be applied to all of life and not just to humans. All of God's creation, everything has life in it. God has made nothing dead. Everything has got life. And so we need to apply this justice, this equity to all of life. And as we know, we're totally dependent on the health and well-being of our planet. So let us get our churches, our temples, our mosques involved in caring for our only home. And I think you've given us a good direction, Nnimmo. So I want to say blessings and all strength as we go into the future. There's a well-known passage of St. Paul's in 1 Corinthians 13, which ends up in saying that there are three things that endure: hope, faith, and love. And so may we all continue to be filled with hope and inspired through our faith and holding on to loving life in all its wonder and variety. Nnimmo, thank you for your challenge and presence with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bishop Jeff. And thank you everybody once again for the support that you're giving to SAFCEI. And we hope that continues as SAFCEI grows its footprint. We're going to close the evening with some closing devotions. We're going to ask Bapiwe, Sean, Cosette, and Berry if they could do their closing devotions.
And Steve, we missed someone at the start. It was Fa. Could we also ask Fa to do a closing devotion? If you're still here with us, Fa, as our fourth closing devotion, if that's all right. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to lead in a prayer, in a closing prayer. Let us pray. God of love, peace, and justice, we pray for all human beings that will be filled with a spirit of concern for the future of our environment. Bring an end to the exploitation of the earth's scarce resources and live as responsible stewards, protecting and respecting this gift of creation God has placed in our hands. May your love and wisdom inspire our actions and transform our world with new steps towards life. Help us to act now for the good of future generations and all your creatures. We thank this. Amen.
Let us pray. We offer our prayers in thanksgiving for this wonderful meeting that we have had, for the presentation that has been shared, and for all who have contributed to this meeting. We offer each other to God as we enter the evening hours. Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who wake or watch or weep this night. Give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick. Give rest to the weary. Sustain the dying. Calm the suffering. And pity the distressed. All for your love's sake. Amen.
Amen.
Great Spirit, whose breath of life flows through the rivers, the trees, the mountains, the sea, and through all of us, we lean in with gratitude to the unconditional support of this world, this earth, the life that gives us life, the light that gives us hope. We look to the lessons of nature all around us, so much wiser than we are. We give thanks for the guidance and the signs and the gifts that serve us just as we serve in our small ways. And we know that we are part of it all, inseparable from the air, inseparable from the water, inseparable from the earth. We are overwhelmed by the greatness of it all, and we surrender in truth, in love, and in peace. May the sun that lights the earth continue to warm and illuminate our own footsteps. May compassion be our guiding voice. May service be our reason. And may eco-justice, sustainable living, and a healthy, balanced earth be our legacy. And so it is.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Don't have to say travel home safely because most of you may be home. If not, please be safe on the road and watch the space for more exciting stuff from SAFCEI.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you again, Nnimmo. Go well, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you all very soon again.
Thank you very much to everyone. It was a wonderful meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, actually. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.